Our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Wednesday, May 27th. Live from Seoul, I'm Sin Se-min. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at this hour. It's back to school season. 2.4 million students all the way from kindergartens through the high schools have gone back to school this Wednesday. Authorities will be giving out new guidelines on the use of face masks and air conditioning in classroom settings. South Korea's GDP ranked 10th in the world last year, down 2 notches from the year before, the first drop in rankings in 11 years. Plus, U.S. President Trump says he'll be coming out with a strong response to Beijing this week over the proposed Hong Kong security law. This as China's parliament is expected to approve the law on Thursday. Today, some 2.4 million students from kindergartens to high school students have arrived at school for the first time this academic year. And also today, South Korean health authorities are set to announce more detailed guidelines on the wearing of face masks and the use of air conditioning at schools. Our Kim Hyo-sun leading us off.
With the temperature climbing in South Korea, mask wearing is not easy despite the fact that quarantine authorities have stressed multiple times that it's one of the most effective means to curb the spread of COVID-19. This is especially the case with younger students. The use of air conditioners is also an issue as the weather heats up, as running air conditioning in enclosed classrooms could increase the risk of droplet infection. The Education Ministry is suggesting schools keep all windows at least 1/3 open at all times when using air conditioning systems. However, the country's quarantine authorities have not yet disclosed detailed guidelines for the use of face masks and air conditioners at schools. They say the guidelines will be rolled out on Wednesday.
As we near summer, there are many voices calling for more detailed guidelines on the use of air conditioning and face masks. We are currently discussing the matter with quarantine authorities.
To prepare schools for the second phase of school resumption on Wednesday, quarantine authorities stress that students and teachers need to check their health condition each morning and stay home if they feel sick. They're also asked to avoid visiting multi-use facilities, including singing rooms and PC cafes. To lower the risk of infection, the Education Ministry has advised schools to limit their capacity to 2/3. This means the students will go to school only on designated days of the week, with elementary schools being required to open at least 1 day a week. However, for some schools, back to school has been postponed once again. Seoul's Gangseogu district announced it was postponing school by another week after a 6-year-old kindergartner tested positive for COVID-19 on Tuesday. Over 450 schools and kindergartens in Seoul, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, and Bucheon also announced similar measures following confirmed cases in their districts. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Also starting this Wednesday, all air passengers in South Korea must wear a protective face mask. The no mask, no ride policy applies to both domestic and international flights. Some airlines, including Korean Air, have already been enforcing such guidelines, but the government has introduced stronger measures to help prevent further infections. And starting from yesterday, all passengers and staffers on buses, taxis, and subways nationwide must also wear face masks. The World Health Organization says it expects hydroxychloroquine safety results to be out by mid-June after safety concerns prompted a group to end its large trial on COVID-19 patients. The WHO previously called time on the drug use in its multinational trial called Solidarity after a study published in a British medical journal suggested that the drug had increased mortality rates and caused irregular heartbeats. U.S. President Donald Trump, who once pushed the drug as a COVID-19 treatment, said he's no longer taking it after completing a 2-week course of the malaria drug. A mink with COVID-19 has infected 2 people in the Netherlands in what is probably the first such transmission case since the outbreak started. The country's agriculture minister said Tuesday that mink carrying the virus were found on 4 of the 155 farms in the Netherlands. The minister also said the animal-to-human transmission outside the farm was negligible. The initial source of infection has been shown to be a sick human. The nation's health authorities said the Mink-to-human transmissions were particularly unheard of, although the original source of infection in China was very likely animals. Back here in the nation, some experts say surgical masks can be just as good as high-efficiency face masks for blocking droplets from coughs or sneezes. As temperatures rise in South Korea and with the COVID-19 outbreak unlikely to end anytime soon, the South Korean government is considering doubling the production of these thinner masks that will be more comfortable to wear in the country's hot and humid summer months. Our Yoon Jung-min with the details.
This experiment shows how surgical masks can be as effective as KF94 masks for blocking droplets from the mouth and nose. The results were published in this month's Journal of Korean Medical Science by Dr. Kim Mina of the Asan Medical Center. It's the first time a post published in a local journal has recommended the public use of surgical masks since the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. Kim says surgical masks are effective enough as they were designed to prevent infections at hospitals and they make it easier for people to breathe. The doctor added high-efficiency mask filters are not recommended to be used for longer than 4 hours as they are affected by moisture when users breathe in and out.
We've been using surgical masks in hospitals for decades. They're effective enough to block droplets. It's important that people wash their hands frequently and keep distance from others.
As summer nears in South Korea, the government plans to double the amount of surgical masks produced.
KF94 masks are highly protective, but they can also make it difficult to breathe, so we recommend dental or surgical masks.
In early June, the government plans to announce its recommended standards for thinner face masks for public use that have the same effectiveness as surgical masks used in hospitals. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Of 38 major and developing economies around the world, South Korea's rank in terms of gross domestic product fell 2 slots to 10th last year. According to an OECD report Wednesday, the GDP of Asia's fourth largest economy in 2019 was $1.6 trillion, down from 8th the previous year. Now, this is the first time in 11 years that the country's GDP ranking has fallen. The OECD added that the drop comes as South Korea's nominal economic growth rate came in at 1.4% last year. South Korea's business sentiment for the month of May edged up across all industries, but was still in the doldrums. The Bank of Korea says the index for all industries was up 2 points on month to 53. The index was also up 6 points for non-manufacturing sectors, but it was down 3 points for manufacturers who pointed to economic uncertainties, sluggish domestic demand, as well as poor exports during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the same goes for the business outlook for June, and it rose 6 points for non-manufacturing sectors, but fell slightly for manufacturers. The Economic Sentiment Index, which includes consumer sentiment, rose over 2 points to at almost 58. South Korean auto giants Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors ranked as the fourth biggest players in the global electric car market for the first half of this year. According to the Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association on this Wednesday, the company's combined EV sales were slightly over 24,000 during the 6-month period. Their total share of the global electric car market stands at 8%. And compared to the same period last year, their EV sales are up almost 26%. And Tesla sold 88,400 cars over the same period, making it the automaker with the largest share in the global electric car market. U.S. President hints that his administration will be coming up with a strong response to China's planned national security legislation for Hong Kong before the end of this week. Now, this as Beijing adamantly pushes to pass national security law on Thursday, despite massive opposition from Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters and a number of world leaders. Our Lee Jae-yong with more.
Last week, Beijing introduced a draft national security law that will bypass the legislature in Hong Kong, prohibiting any act of treason, secession, sedition, and subversion against the Chinese government. Despite the massive protest launched last Sunday by a pro-democracy group in Hong Kong, the bill is set to get the green light on Thursday. According to Bernard Chan, deputy to China's National People's Congress, the Chinese central government is introducing the law in Hong Kong because the territory's authorities have not been able to do it locally for over 20 years, calling it a failure. The Hong Kong government is required to draft a national security law in accordance with Article 23 of the territory's mini-constitution, known as the Basic Law. But it has not been able to, as a previous attempt in 2003 was shelved after mass protests. According to Chen, Beijing feels an urgency to introduce the law after the now scrapped extradition bill led to massive unrest in Hong Kong. While the introduction of the law on Thursday will almost certainly lead to further unrest in Hong Kong, Chan says Hong Kong does not have a say in whether it wants a national security law or not. Washington is continuing to express concerns over the law, as White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow on Tuesday said China was making a big mistake and pledged Washington would pay the expenses of U.S. firms that want to shift operations from Hong Kong or China. President Trump also expressed displeasure over the law and says he finds it hard to see how Hong Kong can remain a financial hub if China takes over. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam, however, says other countries have no place interfering, as she defended the law, calling it a responsible move to protect Hong Kong's law-abiding majority. Lee Jae-yong, Arirang News.
A Chinese embassy official in Seoul says China has shared information with South Korea on its push for a controversial security law for Hong Kong in an apparent move to seek South Korea's backing. Speaking to Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency on Tuesday, the official said China is trying to safeguard the safety of Hong Kong with the South Korean government. Now, the push comes amid an intense clash between Washington and Beijing, and watchers say China's move to seek South Korea's backing could pose a tricky diplomatic challenge to Seoul. Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong returned home early Wednesday morning after a 17-hour-long grilling by prosecutors in relation to the 2015 merger of two Samsung affiliates. Lee appeared before prosecutors at 8 a.m. Tuesday and returned home at around 1:30 a.m. this morning. Prosecutors may have summoned him again if necessary, and his summons is in regards to the merger of Samsung C&T and Cheil Industries back in 2015, which has long underbeen scrutiny. There are suspicions that management may have intentionally lowered the value of Samsung C&T to help Lee secure control of his company, as he was Cheil Industries' largest shareholder. Lee reportedly denied any involvement during the questioning.
Good morning. Southern inland regions will have another day of summer-like weather with highs moving close to the high 20s by the afternoon. And the rest of us will notice highs going a couple notches higher today at 24 degrees Celsius here in the capital. And the strong sunshine will make it feel warmer than the actual readings. And do expect very high UV levels nationwide. So UV blocking sunglasses and a wide brimmed hat should help us to protect ourselves from the very strong rays. Sunny skies and much warmer temperatures are in the forecast by the end of the week. In fact, by Sunday, highs in Seoul could hit 29 degrees Celsius. But tomorrow will be breezy again for some regions, and that's including here in Seoul. Well, because northern parts of Gangwon-do, Gyeonggi-do, and Jeollado provinces will see light rain during the day tomorrow. So rain-affected areas and surrounding regions will have cooler readings on Thursday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for news around the world.
Now, this just coming through the wire, we have just learned that South Korea has added a total of 40 new coronavirus patients on Tuesday alone, adding worries to many parents and students who have sent their students to school on this Wednesday. But with that does it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines coming up at noon Korea time with the latest on coronavirus situation here in the nation. As always, thank you for watching.